Hello, hey guys, and welcome to another day, another episode of the Inglês no Book Club. Today, we are going to talk about a really important concept in language learning, and more specifically, a very important idea, a very important concept within the context of reading. So, what are we talking about? Comprehensible input. I know that comprehensible input sounds like a super boring and nerdy linguistic thing, but I promise it's not that boring. It's easy to understand and it is going to help you a lot. So, what is comprehensible input? That is a great question. Essentially, comprehensible input is language input, which means reading or listening that you can understand even if you don't understand all of the words or structures in it. So I know that's a little bit confusing, but let's break it down. You can think of comprehensible input as material that is just one level above your comfort zone. So the idea is that you are just outside of your comfort zone. And this way, you are constantly and consistently making improvements, and it will really help you acquire language more naturally instead of forcing you to focus on new grammatical structures and difficult vocabulary, things like that. So let's take a moment to think about the benefits of comprehensible input and why you should seriously consider adding more comprehensible input to your language studies. So, benefit number one of a comprehensible input, it's effective. It just works. So let's imagine that you start reading some really difficult literature in English. You are probably going to have a really difficult time understanding everything. You are going to have to search for a ton of words and vocabulary. It is going to take a really long time. And let's face it, it's going to be really, really boring. And you are probably going to give up and want to stop relatively quickly. But on the other hand, if you are applying the comprehensible input technique, you are going to understand most things. So it's not going to be too difficult for you. And you are going to learn a ton of new vocabulary, grammar, and just improve your English fluency in general. Because the idea with comprehensible input is to find material that is just outside of your comfort zone. And this guarantees that you are going to see things that you have never seen before, but they are not going to be so crazy and so out of your range of knowledge that you are totally lost. And on top of that, and I think this might be even more important, comprehensible input really gives you the opportunity to learn language more naturally and more organically. So let me explain. For example, let's imagine that you are reading a book that is talking about a lady in the supermarket. Okay? If this is a really advanced book or a piece of classic literature or something like that, then maybe you would read something like, then the middle aged widow reached into her well trodden burlap sack and handed a freshly picked citrus to the unsuspecting cashier. Something like that, with a lot of fancy words. I am just making this text up off the top of my head. This is not a real text, but you get the idea. The text is quite complicated. It uses a lot of words and expressions that you are not familiar with or you do not understand. And more importantly, it uses a lot of vocabulary and structures that you are probably not going to use in real life conversations. Now, let's take this to the other extreme. So, for example, let's imagine you're reading a children's book that is talking about the exact same subject, a lady in the supermarket. So, this time, maybe you find something like, the lady buys an orange at the supermarket. And in this case, you understand everything. It's very simple. but you are not learning anything new. You are not challenging yourself, and that is a problem, honestly, because when you are learning a new language or learning any new skill, really, the challenge is how you make progress. So finally, let's imagine the comprehensible input technique using this same example. So you are still reading about a lady in a supermarket, but this time, although the material is just a little bit out of your comfort zone, you can still understand more or less everything. So in this case, you might read something like, the young woman took 3 fresh oranges and 2 ripe pears out of her grocery bag and handed them to the friendly girl at the cash register. In this case, you completely understand the context. You understand more or less all of the vocabulary, but there are still a lot of interesting things that you can learn here. You can think, she handed the oranges to the girl. I never knew that you could use the word hand as a verb. That's super valuable. Or you could analyze the text and say, oh, I don't think that I knew the word for pera in English is very, very similar. That's pretty cool. Pera is pear. Maybe I should start using the word pear in English more often. You see what I'm saying? With comprehensible input, there are infinite possibilities. Instead of being limited by a basic text or restricted by a really advanced text, you are in the perfect place, this sweet spot where you can understand more or less everything, but you still have the opportunity to learn a lot and you can have fun and still be challenged in the process. So during the challenge, during the next few weeks, we will still continue to talk a lot about comprehensible input and how to find the perfect material for you. But for now, I just want you to start thinking about this idea of comprehensible input and maybe start thinking about what are some books, articles, blogs, whatever that might be in that perfect sweet spot for you. Okay, guys, so I think that's it for today. I will talk to you tomorrow.